Welcome back to my channel. We have a big problem with so-called rights in the West, mostly because most people don't understand what a right is and what it cannot be. Consider.
Most human needs require money, work, or time from someone else. Look at all the effort it takes for these blokes to get their basic needs. If you had a right to shelter, that would force this builder to build you a house for free.
The only rights you're entitled to don't force others to work for you.
This is basic logic. Anything you want and declare to be a right simply cannot be a right if it requires the money, work, or time from others. That is a form of enslaving someone to provide what you want. I have a right to speech, religion, to bear arms, but I have no right to require anyone provide me a platform for my speech, a church for my religion, or to pay me to get a weapon. This guy covers it well.
Well, Bernie Sanders is back to remind us all that healthcare is a fundamental human right. He's lying about this, and here's how I know. If I were to go to Senator Sanders and I were to say, Bernie, I have a fundamental right to keep and bear arms, therefore I expect the government to provide me said arms at taxpayer expense. I have no doubt that he would be like, well, Nicholas, that is not what a fundamental right is. It does not obligate your neighbor to pay for your guns. Really? My fundamental right to keep and bear arms, just like my fundamental right to freedom of speech or freedom of religion or freedom of the press, doesn't obligate my neighbors to subsidize my rights. You can't have a fundamental right to the labor or property of somebody else because that would essentially enslave that person to your needs, wants, and desires. Healthcare is a series of goods and services, so you can't have a fundamental right to it.
Don't get confused. We all would like people to have health care, but it isn't free. Doctors pay for training and equipment and facilities, not to mention medicines. They need to be paid. You can't get around it by saying we can make their training free and give them whatever facilities and medications they need, because you still have to pay the doctor for their time with a patient. And those free facilities and medicines, well, those are created and maintained by the labor of others as well, and they need to be paid. No matter how you try to hide the costs, they are still there. Healthcare is simply not free. We can also recognize the obvious that it is only if a country is fairly wealthy can you even consider a right to free healthcare. A poor country simply doesn't have the resources. Yet today there are people, including, maybe especially, people right out of college who think healthcare, housing, and food should be free simply because they are necessary. One of their solutions is to just not allow very high fees to be charged by doctors, and government pays the difference. But government is getting that money from other taxpayers, and thus making them work for the benefit of someone else. And that someone else may just be taking advantage of free stuff instead of working for it themselves. We used to learn about that in school when studying the early colonies in the US. Or just limit what doctors can charge without additional compensation from the government. Sounds great until you realize that a government can set the pay for one kind of job. You are allowing them to control everyone's pay. Talk about having tyrannical power. Even without that little power problem, why should the best people want to take on a job that doesn't pay well? People will choose jobs that government decides can pay well, which will typically be working for the government, especially politicians. They always seem to do very well. We hear a lot about healthcare-related businesses ripping off customers, and we need government to solve the problem. But that just means no competition, which means prices will actually go up or quality will go down. And you don't realize that much of the problem we have today is because of government intrusion. There was a lot less of this when I was a boy. We had doctors who regularly made house calls if you didn't feel well enough to go to their office. Prices, even adjusted for inflation, were more reasonable. Government is not the solution, other than for basic things like punishing fraud, preventing price fixing, etc. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.